Hello, and thanks for joining Southeast Speaks, a work of the Southeast Institute of Biblical Studies. Once a week, we meet with students, faculty, alumni, and friends who support the work of training gospel preachers. Enjoy today's discussion, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Southeast Speaks. My name is Will Hanstein. I'm the Executive Director at Southeast, and I have with me one of the elders of the Karns Church of Christ, our overseeing congregation. His name is Dave Benner. Dave, thanks for being here.
Well, it's fun to be here.
Well, just to start us off here, give us a little bit of your background.
Okay, I was raised in central Pennsylvania on a hog farm. It was a very religious area. Everyone went to church. I was trying to think if I knew anyone that didn't go to church. You know, everyone went to church, but it was all denominations. The closest Church of Christ was in Altoona, which was 18 miles away. Probably would have taken 45 minutes and didn't even know about it.
Gotcha.
But, picture a community where, of course, this is in the 50s. When I was growing up, everyone went to some church, and they might not go regularly, but they were identified with some church. And it was a religious area. Later, Old Order Mennonites came with their buggies, and of course, they went to church too. So grew up on a hog farm, went to Penn State eventually, and graduated in 1970 with a forestry degree.
Okay.
And
then where'd you go after that?
Well, I got a job with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and that sent me to different places. In order to, you get trained in different places where there was a trainer, and then every time you wanted to, you had to move to get a promotion,
right.
And I wanted to do that. So we moved to several places in Pennsylvania. One of the places was in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, and that's where I came in contact with the church and was baptized. My wife and I both. I should back up. My wife, Sue, and I were in the same hometown, knew each other forever, went to the same denominational church, sort of thing. And I really needed a date one time, so.
She took pity on you, I guess.
Yeah, the rest is history. So anyway, I went to different places. Greensburg, we were baptized, and then we moved to Brookville, Pennsylvania. And there was a real small church there, and we identified with them. And we learned a lot from a preacher who was just graduating from preaching school, came there and had a lot of questions, and he answered them, with the Bible, not from what he what he thought. So that was our church experience. We moved around, and eventually we were in Minnesota for 23 years, and that's definitely a mission area.
That's what I hear, right?
And we were here in Knoxville in 79 to 84, and were members at Karns at that time, and always thought it would be a good place to retire to for various reasons. The main one being the church here, and that's what we did.
Okay. And you went to Harvard, right? For a master's degree?
That's kind of a. It doesn't show much, but yeah, I spent a year there, and as I like to say, I'm pretty sure I was the only hog farmer there that year, and maybe since then.
Right. Well, Harvard's not necessarily known for their forestry department or anything.
No, they have a natural resources department, but it's not well known.
Gotcha. Well, that's probably quite the change from Minnesota and Pennsylvania, I would guess.
It was. Well, this is a long time ago, so things are very different, I'm sure, than they were. But it was 78, 79, and I went through the Department of Agriculture, sent me there, so it was really a good experience, going there, and just the whole experience was. Alexander Solzhenitsyn was the speaker at graduation.
Oh, really? Wow. Yeah. That would have been.
You might have to look that up if you.
Well, I know who he is, but
depending how old you are.
Yeah, SOLZ, and then
no, I'm not going there.
EHNIT, something like that. So you guys can figure it out off of Google or something. But a guy who came out of communist Russia and was trying to keep the U.S. from going down that same path.
You know what is interesting in his speech? He said I'm from Russia, and it's better here, but it's not that much better. You have your own problems in the USA, and he later returned to Russia.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, interesting. Well, so how long have you been a Christian then?
Well, it's getting close, 50 years. I mentioned our anniversary, and we were married a while before we were baptized, so it's almost 50 years.
Okay, and you're an elder here at Karns.
Yeah.
How long have you been an elder here?
Near as I can remember, it's 5 years. Before that, I was
right.
a deacon for benevolence, which was a challenge in itself.
I'm sure. Well, what is the biggest challenge you think, or the thing that challenges you the most about being an elder?
I think the biggest challenge is encouraging Christians to live as Christians. Of course, we have the Great Commission, which we'll talk about later, but in order to carry out the Great Commission in the way you should, you need to be living as a Christian, walking in the light, and getting our members to be walking in the light and getting them to see when they're not, and accepting it and changing. That's probably the biggest challenge. The year of COVID, which we're not completely out of,
Sure.
that was definitely a challenge.
Yeah, the year and a half and going.
The issues with that, particularly masks and whether elders can tell folks things and whether they can't and that sort of thing. That was a special issue. Coming to grips with the fact that I'm going to be held accountable for how I work with the elders.
Sure.
That's something. I think that's, Paul said twice not to grow weary in doing good in two of his epistles.
Right.
And I think that was directed at elders mainly. I find myself looking at that more often as an elder than I did before.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, what piece of advice would you give other elders?
Well, advice would be concentrate on the fact that you want to be a servant and you're dedicated to being a servant of the Lord. Because if you aren't dedicated to that, it's easy to just give up.
Right.
Make sure every decision is based on the Word. Obvious. Some of this is obvious. And, one of the things I haven't had to struggle with is getting along with the other elders. And I'm sure that's probably a struggle in some places because some people can be extra hard-headed, not just hard-headed. But we don't have that problem here. I can guarantee that. So just hang in there and be dedicated as a servant and study the Word. And keep studying the Word. We're going to talk about the school in a minute, but I've taken a few courses here at school, and I would say the 1 Corinthians course is definitely helpful for any elder. And any elder.
I teach that course, just FYI.
Yeah,
so.
and I learned stuff there.
Well, that's good.
I'm not going to
a thing or two.
I'm not going to take the shot that I was thinking of.
Well, I appreciate that. There's that's uncharacteristic.
It was you got that right. No, that was really a learning experience, and not just from you, the teacher, but some of the interaction was interesting too.
Well, yeah, that can always be interesting.
Yeah.
But well, speaking of the school, the church here at Karns has overseen and supported the school for over 50 years now. I know the eldership as a whole and each individual supports the school. They've made that abundantly clear. But why do you, as individually, think the school is a good work for this church to oversee and be involved in?
Well, I have a little history at the school since I was here from, like I said, 79 to 84. We were here in 70, and the school was young, relatively. And we were friends because we were about the same age as many of the students.
Right.
We were very close friends with some of them. The school is important. We have the Great Commission, obviously.
Right.
And there's more than one way to fulfill the Great Commission. And one of the ways Karns decided a long time ago with the vision of the original elders was to have this school. And now, certainly that's not the only way. That doesn't take away responsibilities for supporting other missions, or our own individual teaching, right, as anyone would know that knows a little bit about the church. But I think there's a big need for preachers to replace older preachers and that are retiring and so on. And we're trying to help fill that need here at Karns. It's just a great work. It's about all I can say.
Well, I appreciate that and appreciate the support that all of you elders give to the school. Why should a man consider preacher or come into a preaching school, and why should he come to Southeast as opposed to somewhere else?
Well, I think, and this is based on some of my experience with preachers that have come here, is that some men get into some other line of work, or even have a degree like in forestry or something like that, and they decide that they want to be preachers, and they really are dedicated to that, and their family is, well, this is where to go, because you get the preaching school education, and then there's no tuition. And one of the things I think that sometimes is overlooked is the congregation here at Karns is so vibrant and active in all. You can learn a lot from the members here. We have retired preachers, and at least one of them I remember is a missionary, a retired missionary was in Africa and Australia,
right?
The Rutherfords, and there's lots of things you can learn from our members, and not just those members, but many of the others here, mature members that you can learn from just by watching them and getting to know them. So that's what I would say. Come to Karns, come to Southeast,
right,
and be a member of Karns, and it'll be a great benefit to any young person wanting to be a preacher.
What do you think is the biggest challenge facing the church today?
Boy, well, the world creeping into the church is what I see. I don't know the best way of saying that, but there's I mentioned that back in my day, there wasn't, everyone was somewhat religious and went to some church and believed in God, but that is not as prominent as it was when I was young. And there's a lot of pressure on churches to accept things that aren't scriptural. There's music issues. There's the participation of women and what's appropriate for women and for men, for that matter, and all kinds of things that you don't see in the world, or excuse me, that you see in the world that people say, well, why don't we do that? Or I think that's the biggest challenge, is holding to the word and what it says, and back to the challenge of an elder is convincing people and holding to what's in the word, and the word means what it says.
Kind of goes back to what you said the biggest challenge is, and that's encouraging Christians
same
themselves
thing.
to lead godly lives. So I can certainly see that, and it also goes back to why you all support the school is the Word of God is the only thing that fixes that. So
right, and I didn't mention, and I forgot to. One of the reasons the school is a great work is the great teachers that have been here and are here now.
Right.
That it's very very well done. A lot of experience and of the teachers, and do very well in instructing on God's word.
Well, I appreciate that, and I would agree.
Sure,
but
of course.
I'm one of those teachers, but leaving me out of it, if you leave me out of it, the pool of teachers improves significantly, if you will. But we do have a fine set of teachers, and we've got a fine set of students right now as well, and so we're very proud of that. And so we really appreciate your time with us today, and appreciate the support you guys give to the school, and certainly all the effort that you put into shepherding the flock here at Karns, and especially through COVID. That, as you mentioned, had to be a unique challenge because I suppose the last time anybody had to deal with something like that would have been 1918 or something.
Yeah,
and there's not too many elders, around today.
Yeah, I'm pretty old, but not that old.
So, well, I appreciate it, Dave, and thank you for joining us here on Southeast Speaks, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Hello, my name is Will Hanstein, and I'm the Executive Director of the Southeast Institute of Biblical Studies in Knoxville, Tennessee. In Matthew chapter 9, verses 37 and 38, Jesus says, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into His harvest." In these two verses, Jesus communicates a very important concept to us. The problem is not with the amount of people who would be willing to obey the gospel. The problem is with the amount of people who would be willing to go and teach the gospel to them. So let me ask you a very important question. Have you considered becoming a gospel preacher? Here at Southeast, we have a no-cost, in-depth program of Bible study where you will learn how to communicate the gospel more effectively. At the end of your 2 years here, you will be awarded with a Bachelor of Biblical Studies degree, and we will help you find a sound congregation with which you can work. So let me ask you again, not have you considered becoming a gospel preacher, but would you consider becoming a gospel preacher? If so, visit our website at makingpreachers.com and fill out an application there. Come to Southeast, where preachers are made.